Lesson 5: Alexander and the Hellenistic Era. It matters because, under the leadership of Alexander the Great, Macedonians and Greeks united to invade and conquer the Persian Empire. In the conquered lands, Greeks and non-Greeks formed a new society in what is known as the Hellenistic Era. Macedonians invade Greece. Guiding question: how did the Macedonians and Greeks conquer the Persian Empire? The Greeks viewed their northern neighbors, the Macedonians, as barbarians. The Macedonians were rural people organized in groups, not in city-states like the Greeks. By the end of the 5th century BC, however, Macedonia emerged as a powerful kingdom. Philip and Alexander. In 359 BC, Philip II came to the throne. He built a powerful army and turned Macedonia into the chief power of the Greek world. Philip was soon drawn into Greek affairs. A great admirer of Greek culture, he longed to unite all of Greece under Macedonia. Fearing Philip, the Athenians allied with a number of other Greek states and fought the Macedonians at the Battle of Chaeronea, near Thebes, in 338 BC. The Macedonian army crushed the Greeks. Philip quickly brought an end to the freedom of the Greek city-states. He insisted that the Greek states form a league and then cooperate with him in a war against Persia. Before Philip could undertake his invasion of Asia, however, he was assassinated, leaving the task to his son Alexander. Alexander the Great was only 20 years old when he became king of Macedonia. However, Philip had carefully prepared his son for kingship. By taking Alexander along with him on military campaigns, Philip taught Alexander the basics of military leadership. After his father's death, Alexander moved quickly to fulfill his father's dream, the invasion of the Persian Empire. He was motivated by the desire for glory and empire, but also by the desire to avenge the Persian burning of Athens in 480 BC. Alexander's conquests. Alexander was taking a chance in attacking the Persian Empire. Although weakened, it was still a strong state in the spring of 334 BC, when Alexander entered Asia Minor with an army of some 37,000 men, both Macedonians and Greeks. The cavalry, which would play an important role as a striking force, numbered about 5,000. By the next year, Alexander had freed the Ionian Greek cities of Western Asia Minor from the Persians and defeated a large Persian army at Issus. He then turned south. By the winter of 332 BC, Alexander had Syria and Egypt under his control. He built Alexandria as the Greek capital of Egypt. It became, and remains today, one of the most important cities in both Egypt and the Mediterranean world. It was also the first of a series of cities named after Alexander. In 331 BC, Alexander turned east and fought the decisive battle with the Persians at Gaugamela, not far from Babylon. Soon Alexander controlled the rest of the Persian Empire. Over the next 3 years, he moved as far as modern Pakistan. In 326 BC, he reached India, where the campaigning was hard. When his soldiers refused to go farther, he agreed to go home. He led his troops across the desert of today's southern Iran. Many were dying of thirst. At one point, some soldier found a little water and offered it to him. According to an ancient Greek writer, Alexander poured it onto the ground. So extraordinary was the effect of this action that the water wasted by Alexander was as good as a drink for every man in the army. Alexander returned to Babylon, planning more conquests. But in 323 BC, exhausted from wounds, fever, and too much alcohol, he died. He was 32 years old. Alexander's legacy. Alexander's extraordinary success is explained by his leadership and military skills. He was a master of strategy and tactics, able to fight in all terrains and against all kinds of opponents. Brave and even reckless, he risked his own life, an example that inspired his soldiers to follow him. Alexander sought to imitate Achilles, the hero of Homer's Iliad. He kept a copy of the Iliad and a dagger under his pillow. Alexander's legacy was enormous. He extended Greek and Macedonian rule over a vast area. Alexander's successors tried to imitate him, using force and claims of divine rule to create military monarchies. Although mainland Greeks remained committed to the ideals of the city-state, The creation of monarchies became part of Alexander's political legacy. Alexander also left a cultural legacy as Greek language, architecture, literature, art, and religious diversity spread throughout parts of Asia and North Africa. Greek culture blended with aspects of Eastern culture to become a new Hellenistic culture. The Hellenistic Era. Guiding question: what was the significance of Hellenistic cities as a result of Alexander the Great's conquests? Alexander created a new age, the Hellenistic era. The word Hellenistic is derived from Greek roots meaning to imitate Greeks. It is a good way to describe an age that saw the expansion of the Greek language and ideas to the non-Greek world of Southwest Asia and beyond. Hellenistic kingdoms. The empire that Alexander created by his conquests fell apart soon after his death, as the most important Macedonian generals engaged in a struggle for power. By 300 BC, any hope of unity was dead, and 4 Hellenistic kingdoms emerged as the successors to Alexander: Macedonia, Syria in the east, the kingdom of Pergamum in Western Asia Minor, and Egypt. All were eventually conquered by the Romans. Alexander the Great had planned to fuse Macedonians, Greeks, and Persians into his new empire by using Persians as officials and encouraging his soldiers to marry native women. The Hellenistic monarchs who succeeded him, however, relied only on Greeks and Macedonians to form the new ruling class. Even those from eastern regions who did advance to important government posts had learned Greek, for all government business was transacted in Greek. In his conquests, Alexander had created a series of new cities and military settlements. Hellenistic kings did likewise. These new population centers varied in size from military settlements of only a few hundred men to cities with thousands of people. Alexandria, which Alexander had founded in Egypt, was the largest city in the Mediterranean region by the 1st century BC. Hellenistic rulers encouraged a spread of Greek colonists to Southwest Asia. Greeks and Macedonians provided not only new recruits for the army, but also a pool of civilian administrators and workers. Architects, engineers, dramatists, and actors were all in high demand in the new Greek cities. The Greek cities of the Hellenistic era became the chief agents in the spread of Greek culture in Southwest Asia, as far, in fact, as modern Afghanistan and India. Hellenistic arts and literature. The Hellenistic era was a period of considerable cultural accomplishment in many areas, especially science and philosophy. These achievements occurred throughout the Hellenistic world. Certain centers, however, stood out. Alexandria became home to poets, writers, philosophers, and scientists, scholars of all kinds. The library in Alexandria became the largest in ancient times, with more than 500,000 scrolls. The library encouraged the study of literature and language. There was also a museum that welcomed scholarly research. The founding of new cities and the rebuilding of old ones presented opportunities for Greek architects and sculptors. Hellenistic kings were very willing to spend money to beautify the cities within their states. The buildings characteristic of the Greek homeland, baths, theaters, and temples, lined the streets of these cities. Both Hellenistic kings and rich citizens patronized sculptors. Thousands of statues were erected in towns and cities all over the Hellenistic world. Hellenistic sculptors maintained the technical skill of the classical period, but they moved away from the idealism of earlier classicism to a more emotional and realistic art. This is especially evident in the numerous statues of elderly women and young children. The Hellenistic age also produced a great quantity of literature. Writing talent was held in high esteem, especially by Hellenistic leaders, who spent large amounts of money subsidizing writers. Unfortunately, very little of this literature has survived. Apollonius of Rhodes wrote the epic poem Argonautica, which tells the story of Jason's search for the Golden Fleece. Theocritus wrote short poems that expressed a love of nature and an appreciation of its beauty. Athens remained the center of Greek theater. A new type of comedy developed that sought only to entertain and to amuse, and avoided political commentary. Menander was perhaps the most successful of these new playwrights. Science and philosophy. The Hellenistic age witnessed considerable advances in astronomy and mathematics. One astronomer, Aristarchus of Samos, developed the theory that the sun is at the center of the universe, while the Earth rotates around the sun in a circular orbit. The prevailing view, in contrast, held that Earth was at the center of the universe. The new theory was not widely accepted at the time. Eratosthenes was another important astronomer. He determined that Earth was round and calculated Earth's circumference at 24,675 miles, 39,702 kilometers, an estimate that was within 185 miles, 298 kilometers of the actual figure. The mathematician Euclid wrote The Elements, a textbook on plane geometry. This work has been used up to modern times. The most famous scientist of the Hellenistic era was Archimedes of Syracuse. He worked on the geometry of spheres and cylinders, and also established the value of the mathematical constant pi. A practical inventor, too, he may have devised the Archimedes screw, a machine used to pump water out of mines and to lift irrigation water. Archimedes' achievements inspired a number of stories. Supposedly, he discovered specific gravity by observing the water he displaced in his bath. He then became so excited by his realization that he jumped out of the water and ran home naked, shouting, "Eureka! I have found it!" Analyzing primary sources. Archimedes on water displacement. Archimedes happened to go to the bath, and on getting into the tub, observed that the more he sank into it, the more water ran out over the tub. Without a moment's delay, and transported with joy, he jumped out of the tub and rushed home, crying with a loud voice that he had found what he was seeking. For as he ran, he shouted repeatedly in Greek, "Eureka! Eureka!" Vitruvius, from De Architectura, Book 9. Athens remained the chief center for philosophy in the Hellenistic era, attracting famous thinkers from all over who established schools there. The development of two new systems of thought, Epicureanism and Stoicism, strengthened Athens' reputation as a philosophical center. Epicurus, the founder of Epicureanism, began a school in Athens at the end of the 4th century BC. He believed that human beings were free to follow their own self-interest and make happiness their goal. The means to happiness was the pursuit of pleasure, the only true good. Epicurus did not speak of the pursuit of pleasure in a physical sense, which is what our word Epicurean has come to mean. Instead, pleasure was freedom from emotional turmoil and worry. To achieve this, people had to free themselves from public activity. Another school of thought was Stoicism. It became the most popular philosophy of the Hellenistic world, and later flourished in the Roman Empire as well. Stoicism was the product of a teacher named Zeno. Zeno came to Athens and began to teach in a building known as the Painted Portico, the Stoa Poikile, hence the word Stoicism. Like Epicureans, Stoics wanted to find happiness, but they thought it could be found only by living in harmony with the will of God. Then they could bear whatever life offered, hence our word Stoic. Unlike Epicureans, Stoics did not want to separate themselves from the world. Public service was regarded as noble. The real Stoic was a good citizen.